A journey through time. Exploring the top 10 recessions. Fasten your seatbelts because we are traveling back in time to visit chapters of our economic history repeatedly marked by financial downturns. These periods of economic hardship, though often tumultuous, have shaped the world we live in today. Welcome to Eskemoz at YouTube, where we bring you engaging narratives from around the world. Today, we'll explore 10 of the most significant recessions that have impacted modern human history. The credit crisis of 1772, the collapse of trust and trade. Our journey begins in the heart of the 18th century, in the bustling financial hub of London. The year is 1772, a time when global trade was flourishing, and the East India Company stood as a symbol of immense wealth and opportunity. The London Bank of Neil James Fortis and Down had invested heavily in the East India Company, enticed by the promise of lucrative returns. But fate had other plans. News arrived from distant shores of setbacks and losses incurred by the East India Company. Panic gripped the investors of Fortis and Down as whispers of insolvency spread. The bank collapsed, sending shockwaves through the financial capitals of Europe. The credit crisis of 1772 serves as a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of global finance and the devastating consequences of unchecked speculation. The Long Depression, 1873 to 1896. A global downturn. We turn our attention now to the year 1873, a year etched in history for the beginning of a period known as the Long Depression. The Vienna Stock Exchange crumbled, setting off a chain reaction that would reverberate across the globe. As news of the crash spread, panic selling gripped investors worldwide, sending stock markets tumbling. The Long Depression was a period of prolonged economic stagnation, particularly in Britain, which had enjoyed a period of unprecedented industrial growth. The Long Depression, spanning over 2 decades, left an indelible mark on the economic landscape, prompting governments and economists to grapple with the challenges of managing interconnected economies. The oil crisis of the 1970s, a geopolitical earthquake. Our journey through time takes us now to the 1970s, a decade marked by significant geopolitical turmoil. In 1973, the world watched as tensions in the Middle East reached a boiling point, erupting in the Yom Kippur War. The Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries, OAPEC, declared an oil embargo against nations perceived as supporting Israel. The price of oil skyrocketed, triggering a global energy crisis. The oil crisis of the 1970s had a profound impact on the global economy, fueling inflation, disrupting industries, and leading to a period of economic stagnation. Chapter 4. The Recession of 1981 to 1982. Tight money's grip. As the 1970s drew to a close, the world braced for the dawn of a new decade, hoping to leave behind the economic turmoil of the previous years. However, the early 1980s brought with them a new set of economic challenges, particularly for the United States. At the helm of the Federal Reserve was Paul Volcker, determined to slay the dragon of inflation. Volcker's weapon of choice, tight monetary policy, raising interest rates and constricting the money supply. While Volcker's policies succeeded in reining in inflation, they came at a significant cost. The recession of 1981 to 1982, though painful, marked a turning point in U.S. economic history, ushering in an era of lower inflation and laying the groundwork for sustained economic growth. Chapter 5. The Recession of the Early 1990s, an Oil Price Shock and Tight Money. The early 1990s, a time of significant geopolitical change, also witnessed another economic downturn. The global economy, still recovering from the aftershocks of the 1980s recession, faced a new set of challenges, driven in part by an oil price shock. The Iraqi invasion of Kuwait in August 1990 sent shockwaves through the global oil markets. The oil price shock fueled inflation and dampened consumer confidence, contributing to a global economic slowdown. The United States faced a recession that began in July 1990. The Federal Reserve, led by Alan Greenspan, responded by lowering interest rates to stimulate economic activity. By March 1991, the U.S. economy had officially entered a period of recovery, embarking on what would become the longest economic expansion in American history. Chapter 6. The recession of 2001, the dot-com bubble bursts. As the 20th century drew to a close, a sense of optimism and technological innovation filled the air. The internet had exploded into the public consciousness, transforming the way we communicate, access information, and conduct business. The dot-com boom, fueled by a frenzy of investment in internet-based companies, had propelled stock markets to dizzying heights. However, the dot-com bubble, like all bubbles, was destined to burst. Many of the dot-com companies that had attracted so much investment were unprofitable. The Nasdaq peaked in March 2000 before entering a freefall. The bursting of the dot-com bubble, coupled with the Y2K scare, triggered a recession in the United States. Our exploration of economic downturns takes us now to East Asia, a region that had experienced decades of remarkable economic growth. However, in 1997, a financial crisis erupted in Thailand, quickly spreading to neighboring countries. The crisis began with the collapse of the Thai baht, which had been pegged to the US dollar. As foreign investors lost confidence in the Thai economy, they began to withdraw their investments. The Thai government, in an attempt to defend the baht's peg to the US dollar, depleted its foreign exchange reserves. On July 2, 1997, the Thai government was forced to float the baht. The baht plummeted in value, triggering a financial meltdown that quickly spread to other Southeast Asian economies. The International Monetary Fund, or IMF, stepped in with rescue packages for the affected countries, but the conditions attached to these loans proved controversial. Chapter 8. The Great Recession of 2008. A housing bubble bursts. The year 2008 will forever be etched in the annals of economic history as the year the world teetered on the brink of financial collapse. The Great Recession was a global financial crisis, the likes of which had not been seen since the Great Depression of the 1930s. At the heart of this crisis lay the U.S. housing market, which had experienced a prolonged boom in the early 2000s. Financial institutions created complex financial instruments known as mortgage-backed securities. As long as housing prices continued to rise, these securities were perceived as safe investments. However, the foundation began to crumble in 2007 when U.S. housing prices began to fall. Financial institutions, saddled with these toxic assets, faced massive losses, and the global financial system froze. Chapter 9. The COVID-19 Recession, a pandemic's economic fallout. In early 2020, the world watched in disbelief as a novel coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, spread rapidly from its origins in Wuhan, China. The COVID-19 pandemic would not only claim millions of lives, but also trigger the most severe global economic crisis since the Great Depression. As the virus spread, governments around the world implemented lockdowns and other restrictive measures. Businesses were forced to close their doors, travel came to a standstill, and global supply chains were disrupted. The economic impact of the pandemic was swift and severe. Stock markets crashed, unemployment soared, and businesses large and small faced bankruptcy. Governments and central banks around the world responded with massive fiscal and monetary stimulus packages. These measures, while necessary, have also led to a surge in government debt and raised concerns about inflation. Chapter 10. The Great Depression, a global economic catastrophe. Our journey through time concludes with perhaps the most infamous economic crisis in modern history, the Great Depression. The year 1929 witnessed the collapse of the U.S. stock market, an event that marked the beginning of a decade of economic hardship. The Roaring Twenties, a period of economic prosperity, came to a screeching halt as stock prices plummeted on Black Thursday, October 24, 1929. Panic selling gripped investors, wiping out billions of dollars in market value. The stock market crash exposed underlying weaknesses in the U.S. economy, including overproduction, speculation, and a widening gap between rich and poor. The crash had a domino effect on the global economy as international trade contracted. Unemployment in the United States soared to 25% as factories closed their doors and businesses failed. The Great Depression had a profound impact on the political landscape, leading to the rise of extremist movements in Europe and paving the way for World War II. Outro Lessons from the Abyss: Navigating Economic Uncertainty. As we navigate choppy economic waters, It's important to remember that periods of recession are not unprecedented. Past crises have taught valuable lessons that can guide us towards recovery and success. From the collapse of empires to the bursting of speculative bubbles, history provides a roadmap for navigating economic uncertainty. By studying the past, understanding the causes and consequences of economic downturns, we can better prepare for the challenges of the future and build a more resilient and equitable global economy.